Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to our weekly ship show. My name is Jason Brand. I am the Director of Outreach and Partner Development here at Supply Chain Solutions. So we got a topic today. We've actually touched on it the past few weeks, but it's time we dive into it a little bit deeper. And this is going to be talking about the Mexican seaport boom and kind of this overarching nearshoring trend that's happening right now. So specifically, today I want to take a look at the numbers and a little bit of the commentary, a little bit of the concerns, or the benefits, but really kind of taking a look at like the analysts and the investment point of view as well. So prepare yourselves. Now, if you have not joined us before, it is our target to do our shows here for like a 15-minute period. Really, we want to catch you after lunch if you're in, EST, and just 15 minutes debrief on something going on in the market. Every other week, we do something called the Freight Market Roundup. It's a broad spectrum look at the major trade lanes. We talk about rates. We talk about key things that our team is kind of strategically having to work around or work with. And then the weeks in between, we either have guests on the show or we dive into topics that we've been bringing up, maybe on the Freight Market Roundup, that are critical that we've got to talk about. So that's where this topic came from, and we're going to be talking about it now. So let's dive in to this knowledge gavage. So if you've been on our Freight Market Roundups, again, that's Thursdays, 1 p.m. Eastern, every single week live. We've been talking about this recent surge in port activity, and there's been a lot of vessels going from the Asia realm into Mexican West Coast ports. It's so much so that it's really kind of taken us by storm at the volume and the costs that it has been just in the past few months, and also the rate of increase for those costs. So there's a lot of data that we can kind of dive into to kind of set the framework for what's been going on in Mexico and what we can kind of find is, where the legs on this trend are. But I kind of want to take a look at 2023 first. So let's go back to 2023. And what we saw is the Mexican ports of Manzanillo, and you're going to have to apologize for me on a couple of these names, but Lázaro Cárdenas, they experienced this huge cargo growth. And it really started highlighting a shift in trade dynamics, especially when you compared those numbers to what was happening in the US ports. So Manzanillo's container traffic, it increased by nearly 7%. So they just got this huge boost. They actually became the 5th busiest port in all of North America. Now, this growth was supported by the vessel operators such as Costco, CMA, CGA, Mediterranean Shipping Co., and OOCL. They all added services to this lane back in 2023, and we've talked about this year as well. They have continued adding services just because it's been so hot. But it's not only Manzanillo in Mexico that saw this huge boost. We also saw other ports such as, again, what I mentioned, Lázaro Cárdenas and Altamira. They also advanced in their rankings. So Lázaro moved up to the 11th spot of 11th busiest port in North America, and Altamira moved up to the 19th busiest import container port in North America. So, and they also both got new shipping services as well. Now, if we take a switch over to the US ports and we look at the same time period, kind of compare how they were doing during that same period, we saw Miami drop to one position down, making it the 16th busiest port. And then Prince Rupert, Jacksonville, and Mobile, each of them rose by 1 spot. Now, despite what that kind of looks like, shifting up and down, maybe kind of maintaining neutral, the overall performance of US ports was really in the red. It was marked by declines in both overall exports and overall imports. So looking at the leading US ports, Los Angeles, New York, New Jersey, and Long Beach, they handled a combined 11.8 million TEUs of imports in 2023. That number represents a staggering decline of 14.5% from the previous year. Now, similarly, when you look at total exports and you look at those same ports, you see there's also a decrease of 2.2%. Now, granted, we're looking at 2023 here, but what we saw is year-over-year growth and substantial year-over-year growth in Mexico, while we saw year-over-year declines in these U.S. ports. Now, it's pretty clear when you do that comparative fashion. We take a look at just the idea of what's been happening in international business. So for over a century, the goal has been expanding towards just greater interrelatedness, for where businesses are getting their products. And this in turn has, we've been able to have more complex products, but it has brought in more complexity. So these companies have been extending production across more locations and greater distances. And they've been using a model that's relied heavily on a strong logistics network to deliver consistently, but also affordably. Recent years, obviously, the modern geopolitical landscape has just been strained, and it's been straining this global manufacturing style of business. I mean, we've dealt with everything from the trade war with China. We've got the armed conflicts like the ones currently going on in Ukraine and the Middle East. And, obviously not to mention the global pandemic and everything and all of the complexities that came with it, which we've talked about, week over week for a very long time here. So basically, the recent landscape is just one of near constant disruption. And it's this idea of the old model of this, let's have interrelatedness all over the world and do this global manufacturing, that's kind of switched over to a nearshoring kind of strategy. And in turn, Mexico's been emerging as a significant beneficiary. And we saw this back, obviously, in the port data back in 2023, but beyond that. So there are some numbers supporting this. So in 2023, Mexico became the top exporter of the US. It actually captured a 15% share of US imports, and it officially surpassed China, which dropped to third place with a 13% share. The shift also, this is obviously underscoring more of the nearshoringness boom. But, Mexico has obviously got a good strategic location, and the trade agreements really have positioned it to be a great player in the US production. Now, additionally, when you think about foreign direct investment, Mexico saw their foreign direct investment just surge. This is back in 2023. They saw 378 new foreign direct investment announcements, and it reached a total of 32.9 billion by the end of the third quarter. And out of all of that foreign direct investment, I'll just say FDI, we had US businesses leading those investments at 38%. And that was followed by China, Denmark, Australia, and then South Korea. So another interesting fact about all this FDI is 48% of it wasn't expansion. 48% of it was actually new investment. It was coming from new companies or new projects relocating their operations to Mexico. And that, again, is highlighting, a clear benefit that Mexico provides based on its location and based on those trade agreements for U.S. production. So the demand for industrial property in Mexico, it's been in a little bit of a pinch. It is projected to increase by nearly 80%. There is actually an estimated 2.5 million square meters needed currently. And this is being driven largely by the automotive and electronic sectors. Manufacturing is constituting currently around 17% of Mexico's GDP, and it's experiencing an annual growth rate of in the 5% region, which that was recorded 5.2% back in 2022. And if you look at the 10-year average, it used to be 10-year average 2.3%. So obviously significantly higher and, going up. Now, while this is obviously some pretty clear growth, we do have some issues that have been arising during this process. And, a couple clear things are we are dealing with rising costs currently when you are operating in Mexico. And also there's a lot of issues with aging infrastructure. And on top of that, political uncertainties, just a few things. Costs for industrial space. So if we think about materials and labor, they've all been heading upward. And then on top of that, you've got the situation in the finance markets where you've got a really strong peso. So if you look specifically at industrial space, you've got land prices, for example, Nuevo Leon. Land prices rose by 25%. And this was just following the announcement of Tesla's factory back in March 2023, which, by the way, that project, I don't want to dive into too much, but I believe it's still on hold. We'll have to double check that. Now, beyond that, the price of cement and reinforced steel, both of those went up by 25% from late 2021 to mid 2022. And then also we saw the minimum wage in Mexico rise by 20% in January of 2023. So we do also have infrastructure challenges. And this is known. If you've done business in Mexico, if you have been shipping in Mexico, there is these infrastructure uniqueness that you have to deal with. But unfortunately, you can look to one of the big ports there to really see, when this becomes a problem. So this is at Lázaro Cárdenas. They're constantly struggling with on-time performance. They do have a significant number of delays. And a lot of this can be attributed to just aging infrastructure in general. But beyond that, shipping in Mexico, you have these security risks from drug cartels. And, if you look at the whole package in general, while they are positioned fantastically and while they have these great trade agreements with us and while they really have moved up, into a spot of being a primary trading partner with the US, they still are having a hard time just pitching themselves in comparison to other manufacturing options like Vietnam, like Canada, like Germany, like India. Now, despite all of this, though, still, the case seems very clear from companies because really the foreign direct investment and inventory in general is just pouring in at an increasing rate. And so it's clear that those dilemmas are short-term problems, but this move to Mexico is a long-term solution for a lot of companies. So let's take a look at this. First quarter 2024, Mexico set a totally new record for FDI, foreign direct investment. They had a record 20.3 billion, which was a 9% year-over-year increase. And as you remember, 2023 was a huge year for FDI for Mexico as well. But then beyond that, let's think about inventory. So the port of Eagle Pass, Texas, they actually emerged as the fastest growing border crossing in the US. They recorded over 11.37 billion in trade from January to March of 2024. And that's a 22% increase from the same period last year. Now, this growth, it's being driven largely by imports of commercial and passenger vehicles and beer, along with exports of auto parts, gasoline, and soybeans. Now, the significant impact of rail services, especially following the merger of Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern, and the partnership between Union Pacific and Ferromex, they've just been pivotal to this expansion. So Eagle Pass now operates 15 to 18 trains daily across its international bridge, and they are actually considering a second rail and truck bridge to further increase this capacity. Now, the increasing demand for Mexico's cross-border, it's fascinating because if you kind of take a look at these broader trends and you try to determine, okay, is this just a boom? Is there going to be a bust and whatnot? If you look at some of the more nuanced factors, such as, for example, drivers. We are experiencing a huge driver shortage right now when you look at this cross-border market. So the International Road Transport Union, they currently are reporting potentially there is up to 56,000 unfilled driver positions in Mexico. Now, the goal here is, and they're essentially saying if we can build more long-term contracts and we can really lean on shippers, we can solve this problem. But currently, there's a big hole in this driver situation. So obviously, there are some challenges when operating in the Mexican market that are unique to the Mexican market. And, our goal here at SCS has been able to serve our customers as best as possible. So back actually in fall of last year, we acquired a company called G4 Logistics. They have operations in Mexico, right across. We've got Texas and also Mexico as well. And it's really helped us up our game in our ability to service our customers, and especially those customers that have been thinking about Mexico, have been looking into Mexico. And beyond that, we've got a partnership with a company called BCC Sourcing. They just excel at evaluating potential suppliers, and they manage the entire implementation and sampling process. So their goal is to really ensure that if you're entering a new manufacturing market, you get the results you want at a price that you can project in advance. So it can make it clean, it can make it easy. They put feet on the ground at the supplier location to ensure the whole process goes exactly how you want to. It's been fantastic. So make sure if you're thinking about entering Mexico, because it's very, very clear that the market is choosing Mexico at this point, at least the US market is, reach out to our team. We've got a bunch of experts in-house. We can kind of handhold you through the process. Even if you're not sure if it's the right option for you, we can walk through that process as well. It's a quick kind of blast, but the goal here today is to run through, hey, what are the changes we've been seeing? And as you can see, Mexico is growing substantially, especially compared to other options. And beyond that, the freight rates going into Mexico are huge just because the demand going into Mexico is huge right now. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. My name is Jason Brand, and catch us next week.